What happens the day an officer snaps? Let's get into it. I was in corrections for 26 and a half years, and there comes a time when officers lose it. When officers and staff in general just finally have enough. And they say, you know, inmates are the ones that always, going off, being violent and things like that. But that's not always the case. Staff lose it too. And when you work in that environment, you're dealing with people that are constantly picking at you and just doing things to antagonize you and insult you. And after years and years of basically mental abuse, there's times whenever you snap. And this is a couple stories about that. Over my time in corrections, I've worked with many people and watched many different events like this happen. It's kind of crazy that you think that, as a correctional officer or a correctional person, that you're going to stay professional all the time and you're always going to do the right thing. But sometimes you just have enough and you just lose your shit over, it could be anything. You could be having difficulties at home. You could be, uh, you could be going through something, divorce, problems with your wife, whatever. And you come to work, and the last thing you want to hear is somebody bitch about toilet paper or bitch about, something that you find very insignificant. But to inmates, the things that are important to them are not always important to you. And you got to figure out how to manage life, how to manage your professional career, and how to navigate all that and keep your sanity. So, the first story I'm going to tell you, this is about a guy, we're going to call him uh, Captain Larry. And Captain Larry was going through a regular shift, and this was working on a segregation unit. And he'd been working that segregation unit for a long time. And when you work seg, anybody that's ever worked in a prison, or if you've ever been in prison and you've been in seg, you know that it's easy to agitate or piss off your officers that are working because they're trying to get so much stuff done, and they're usually shorthanded, um, things of that nature. They don't really um, have enough time on their hands to get all the things they need to get done this shift. If you work that environment enough, you're stressed out. That's why so many people in corrections get divorced, have marital problems, all that kind of thing, because you see so many devastating things. You see violence. You see um, people always antagonizing, talking utter shit to you all the time, degrading you in any way they can find a way to do that. They attack your appearance, they attack your weight, they attack everything, and on a daily basis, that is um, something that affects you mentally, whether you want to admit it or not. A lot of guys try to be tough and say that, that shit don't bother me. They can call me out of my name and call me this and that, and it doesn't bother me. But after a while, it does. In this case, Captain Larry went to a routine uh, day. They're showering. That's when you bring the inmates out of their cells and you take them to the shower, and they're in handcuffs and shackles. You put them in the shower, take their handcuffs, shackles off. They get 15 minutes to shower, etc. And then in the middle of that, you got chow going. So your trays come in, then you got to go around and feed them chow. And on this day, a particular guy was giving the officers fits and talking a lot of shit on them, and just trying to make their day hard. And so they had to bring this guy out, and get him off the pod because he was getting all the other inmates riled up and then getting them to go off. And that's what they do a lot of times. They get one guy goes off and then multiple guys follow suit because it's like um, a group mentality, and then they get started and get going, and you got to stop that. So anyway, they take this guy off. Captain Larry and another officer takes this guy off. They take him out of the shower because he's been disrupting the shower, throwing soap, uh, kicking the door, uh, doing all kinds of disruptive stuff. So they have to get him off the pod because he's causing so much chaos that if they don't get him off, then the rest of the unit's going to go off. So they get him off. They take him down the stairs because it's a two-tier, two-level pod. So they get him out off to the left side. So they bring him out, bring him down the stairs, take him out through the sally ports, which is two doors. You got first door, sally port, second door, and out. They get him out and put him in what they call a neutral position. And that's where um, you have a guy handcuffed and shackled, and then you make him get down on his knees and put his head against the wall. So they take this guy out, put him out in a neutral position like that, and then they're talking, trying to tell him, we're not putting up with this kind of bullshit. You're not going to get away with all this kind of behavior, and the guy's basically just talking mad crazy to him, disrespecting them, calling them, out of their names, um, all that kind of stuff, calling them bitches and whores, and just being disrespectful. And that day, for whatever reason, something snapped in Captain Larry, and he ends up getting the guy back up on his feet, and he's facing away from him. He's handcuffed and shackled. So basically, you're defenseless. You can't do nothing when you got that much control over the situation. You cannot use force. But in that day, in that time, the guy's been over, and he's in a neutral position. His head's on the wall. Captain Larry punches him right in the face and just pummels him, smacks him 2 or 3 times in the face, knocks his teeth out, and basically says, I'm not taking your shit no more. You're a whore, all this kind of stuff, and just cussing him and slaps the shit out of him and beats him up pretty bad. So, during that time, it's right out in front of the control room. So in the control room, there's several staff people in there witnessing this whole episode, and you have 2 officers with the captain watching this and petrified about what do we do? What do we do? And that's what's going through their heads because this is a superior officer just beating the hell out of somebody. And as a lower ranking officer, what do you do? Uh, Nobody stepped in to stop it. They let it play out. It plays out. They end up having to take the guy up to medical. Medical has to attend to him, uh, and then they go from there. So they escort him out, take him up to medical. Medical treats him. They have to end up sending him out to the outside hospital. Then reports have to be written, and things have to be documented. So during this process, now everybody's trying to figure out what the hell do we write? How do we do this without getting him in trouble or betraying our? Because there's like a code. Inmates have a code, staff have a code, and the code of staff is basically we stick together and that type of thing. But in these situations, you've got to make a decision. Are you going to go to jail for somebody that does something so horribly wrong, or are you going to tell the truth and not only keep your job but stay free? So that's the dilemma when situations like this happen: is what do you do? Do you do what's right? Do you do what's uh, the good old boy code is? What do you do? And in this case, it ended up with the inmate, you know, filing a lawsuit inmate filing grievances, uh, investigators get called in from the outside, people get interviewed, and the long story short of it is during this whole process, Captain Larry's going all around the building saying, I slapped the shit out of this guy. I I beat the shit out of him. I broke my wedding ring. I hit him so hard it exploded. And then in that process, everybody's like in horror because everybody's like, what is he thinking? Why would he tell that? Why would he be open about it? And that's the question. Why would you tell everybody about it? Because you're basically admitting to a crime because you're violating the guy's civil rights. And basically, that's what happened. So after this whole thing, this whole deal worked itself out, you know, the investigators come up, investigated it. They made very clear to the people that they were interviewing, you better tell us the truth. Because if you don't tell us the truth, you're going to go to jail. So their mindset was pretty clear. Do I save my ass or do I protect you? And the bottom line is human beings self preserve. And the preservation of your freedom is more important than some other guy. So he's got to be sacrificed. And it's not your fault, but you have to make a decision. Are you going to go down with the ship? Or are you going to do the right thing and keep your job and do what's right? In this case, everybody ended up telling the truth after some people had to be coerced into telling the truth. They finally did tell the truth. The captain got fired. People got disciplined because a lot of people didn't come straight forward with all the information. So some people got suspended, and all over when somebody snaps. Because in those situations, what you should do is remove yourself. If you're so amped up and you're so messed up in your mind that you snap to the point where you're injuring people that are handcuffed and shackled, you don't need to be in the profession in the first place. You need to go on and try to deliver newspapers or DoorDash or do something else because this ain't the job for you. Because you've got to learn how to control your emotions in order to be not only a good correctional officer, but a good correctional staff. And when you get to the point where you allow inmates to draw you out to the point where you're going to use physical violence and not only threaten your career but threaten your freedom, then it's either time to get out of the profession or remove yourself from the situation so you don't get to that point. And your coworkers need to be able to tell you, yeah, you need to step out of this, go down the hallway, do whatever, but you never cross the line because once you cross the line, you can never come back from that. And once you violate uh, an inmate's civil rights, you could go to prison for a long time. You'll be in a prison with them. And believe me, as a correctional officer or correctional staff, the last place you want to end up is prison because you become immediately a victim because everybody that's in there hates your guts and they're going to do something to harm you. So in this scenario, the best thing you could do is do what you're supposed to do and just remove yourself from the situation. Don't ever be like Captain Larry. Don't lose your shit. Don't lose your mind. Do the right thing and the rest will follow. But you have to always stay composed. Don't lose it over somebody calling you fat or stupid or whatever. And just because somebody talks shit to you doesn't mean you can put your hands on them. Always remember your policy. Always do what the next right thing. And let's always remember, you always want to stay on the other side.